Admiral James Wilson leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling of his small office at Earth Defense Command. The walls around him were covered with rejection letters and technical reports. All of them said the same thing. His battleship design was impossible. Unfeasible power requirements. Structure cannot withstand proposed weapon systems. Violates 3 known laws of physics. The latest rejection, from the Combined Earth Military Engineering Court, sat on his desk. Wilson picked it up and read the conclusion again. While Admiral Wilson's theoretical Thunderchild design shows creative thinking, it remains physically impossible to construct with current or projected technology. The power core alone would require an energy source that simply cannot exist. Wilson tossed the report back onto his desk and rubbed his tired eyes. 30 years in the Earth Defense Fleet, and all he had to show for it was a reputation as a dreamer who had lost touch with reality. Outside his window, the gleaming towers of New Geneva sparkled in the morning sun. It all looked so peaceful. The civilians down there had no idea how vulnerable they really were. The door chime interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," Wilson called. The door slid open to reveal Captain Thomas Reed, his former student, and one of the few officers who still treated him with genuine respect. Reed's uniform was crisp as always, but his face looked drawn with worry. "Admiral," Reed said, stepping inside and letting the door close behind him. "Sorry to disturb you, but I thought you should hear this directly from me." Wilson gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit down, Tom. What's happened?" Reed sat but perched on the edge of the seat. The Kraul have broken through the outer defense line at Proxima Centauri. All 3 station outposts have gone silent. The 4th Fleet engaged them, but He paused. "The 4th Fleet is gone, sir." Wilson's blood went cold. The entire fleet. Admiral Chen's flagship, too. All of it. The Kraul have developed some new weapon system. Based on the fragmentary data we received, they can somehow disrupt our shield harmonics from a distance we never thought possible. Our ships were defenseless. "How long?" Wilson asked, his mind already calculating distances and fleet movements. "Intelligence gives us 3 weeks before their main force reaches Earth's solar system. Maybe a month before they reach Earth itself." Wilson stood up and walked to his window. 3 weeks. The Earth Defense Council would be panicking right now, scrambling existing ships into defensive formations that would be just as vulnerable as the 4th Fleet had been. "The conventional response won't work," Wilson said quietly. "We need something they haven't seen before, something they can't predict." Reed nodded. "That's why I'm here, sir. I've always believed in your ideas, even when others didn't. If there was ever a time for an unconventional approach." Wilson turned back from the window, a new resolve hardening in his eyes. "Tom, what I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." Wilson entered a code into his desk terminal. The ordinary-looking wall behind him slid open to reveal a hidden room. He motioned for Reed to follow him inside. The small chamber contained a 3-dimensional holographic projector in the center. Wilson activated it, and a detailed schematic of a massive battleship appeared, rotating slowly in the air before them. Reed's eyes widened. "Is that the Thunderchild?" Wilson confirmed. "Not just designs anymore, Tom. I've been building it." "That's how." "The Defense Council rejected the funding years ago." Wilson smiled grimly. "I have friends in private industry who believe in being prepared. We've been constructing it in sections within an asteroid in the belt. The official records show it as a mining operation." Reed stared at the hologram in disbelief. The ship was unlike anything in Earth's fleet, angular where most ships were smooth, with strange protrusions and technology configurations that defied conventional engineering principles. "But sir, even if you've managed to build the hull and infrastructure, what about the power core?" Every engineer in the system said it was theoretically impossible. Wilson touched the terminal, and the hologram zoomed in to show the central core of the ship, a spherical chamber surrounded by concentric rings of unknown technology. That's where Dr. Anna Foster comes in, Wilson said. Have you heard of her? Reed shook his head. She was a theoretical physicist at Europa University until 3 years ago. Then she seemingly disappeared from academic circles. The truth is, she's been working with me. She developed a way to tap into what she calls dimensional bleed, drawing power from parallel dimensional spaces. Reed looked skeptical. That sounds like science fiction. Sir. So did splitting the atom, once, Wilson replied. 2 days ago, we successfully tested the core at 20% capacity. It generated more power than the entire North American power grid. Reed sat down heavily on a nearby stool. So the Thunderchild is real. It exists. It exists, but it's untested in combat. The weapons systems are installed but not fully calibrated. Some of the defensive systems are still theoretical. Wilson looked Reed directly in the eyes. But it's the only chance we have. The Crawl have never seen anything like it. Does the Defense Council know? Wilson shook his head. No, and they won't, not until we present them with a fully operational battleship. They'd shut us down if they knew we'd gone this far on our own. Us? Reed asked. I need a crew, Tom. A small, trusted group who can think outside the box and are willing to take enormous risks. I need you to captain her. Reed stood up straighter. Me? But you're the one who designed her. You should. I'm too old to captain a ship in combat, Wilson interrupted. I'll be aboard as admiral. But I need you on the bridge. There's no one I trust more. Through the window behind them, sirens began to wail across the city. The public announcement was beginning. Earth was now officially at war. Wilson looked at the hologram of his impossible ship and then back at Reed. We launch in 48 hours. I need your answer now, Captain. Reed's face showed fear, uncertainty, and then determination. He stood straight and saluted. I'm with you, Admiral. When do we start assembling the crew? Wilson turned off the hologram, the massive shape of the Thunderchild vanishing into darkness. Now, he said. We start now. The command center of Earth Defense Headquarters buzzed with frantic activity. Officers rushed between stations, their faces pale with tension. On the main screen, red dots representing Crawl warships moved steadily toward Earth's solar system, swallowing the blue dots of Earth's defensive fleet one by one. General Adams clenched his fist on the central table. We've lost contact with the 7th Fleet at Saturn's orbit. The Crawl broke through them like they weren't even there. The Defense Council members exchanged grim looks. Earth's most advanced ships, their best technology, their bravest crews, all falling before the Crawl advance. The alien armada would reach Earth within days. What about the experimental shield modifications? Asked one counselor. Failed, Adams replied flatly. The Crawl adapted within minutes. In the back of the room, Admiral Wilson stood silently watching the disaster unfold. He checked his watch. It was time. General, Wilson said, stepping forward, I request permission to deploy a new asset. Adams looked up with irritation. What new asset? Every ship we have is already engaged. Wilson met his gaze steadily. Not every ship. Captain Thomas Reed stood in the hidden dock carved within asteroid MX-117, staring up at the massive shape of the Thunderchild. Workers scurried around the dock, making final preparations. The ship loomed above them, dark, angular, and intimidating. Beautiful, isn't she? Came a voice beside him. Reed turned to see Dr. Anna Foster, the physicist responsible for the ship's impossible power core. Her eyes reflected the dim blue glow from the ship's external lights. Beautiful and terrifying, Reed admitted. Will she actually work? Foster smiled thinly. The core is stable at 60% capacity. That's more than enough to power all primary systems. Beyond that, she shrugged. We're in uncharted territory. A commotion at the dock entrance drew their attention. Admiral Wilson entered, followed by a group of about 20 people in various uniforms and civilian clothes. Your crew, Foster said quietly. Good luck. Captain. She walked away as Wilson approached with the group. Captain Reed. Wilson said formally. May I present your volunteer crew? Reed looked over the small group. Far too few to properly man a battleship of the Thunderchild's size, but quality would have to overcome quantity. Wilson began the introductions. Lieutenant Mark Davis, weapons specialist, former instructor at the Luna Academy until the Crawl destroyed the colony where his family lived. A hard-faced man with close-cropped hair nodded curtly. Chief Engineer Olivia Grant. She helped design the cooling systems for the main reactor. A tall woman with calloused hands and intelligent eyes stepped forward. Captain, the engine room is ready, but I must warn you, we've never tested the power systems under combat conditions. None of this has been tested under combat conditions, Wilson replied grimly. That's why we're all here. The introductions continued. Navigator Paul Jones, a civilian pilot with a reputation for flying routes others called suicide. Communications specialist Robert Turner, discharged from regular service for creative interpretation of protocols. Dr. Lisa Martinez, a military surgeon with experience treating plasma burns, and a dozen others, scientists, engineers, and soldiers, all volunteers, all knowing this mission might be a one-way trip. This is everyone. Reed asked when Wilson finished. Everyone willing to gamble their lives on an impossible ship, Wilson confirmed. We'll be severely understaffed. Most of you will pull double shifts and duties outside your specialties. No one complained. No one walked away. Wilson looked at his watch again. Earth Defense Command has just been informed of our existence. They're desperate enough not to ask too many questions. We launch in 30 minutes. The bridge of the Thunderchild hummed with nervous energy as the crew took their stations. Unlike the polished, ergonomic bridges of standard Earth vessels, this one was utilitarian and crowded with experimental interfaces. Reed settled into the captain's chair, feeling its unfamiliar contours. Status report, he ordered. Navigator Jones swiveled from his station. All moorings cleared. Asteroid dock doors opening now. Through the forward viewport, Reed watched as the massive stone doors slowly parted, revealing the star-filled blackness of space. Lieutenant Davis at Weapons shook his head in wonder. I still don't understand how half these systems are supposed to function. The targeting algorithms alone violate standard. Standard won't save Earth, Reed interrupted. Is Weapons Control responding? Davis checked his console. Yes, sir. All weapons systems show green, though I can't guarantee accuracy on the first volley. Engineer Grant, how's our power? Grant's voice came through the comm from the engine room. Core is stable at 40%, Captain. I can give you more if needed, but Dr. Foster recommends we stay below 60% until we're sure the containment fields hold under stress. Reed nodded. Understood. Communications. Any word from Earth Defense? Turner touched his earpiece. They've cleared us for immediate launch, sir. General Adams sends, and I quote, Godspeed, you crazy bastards. A hint of a smile touched Reed's lips. Navigation, take us out. 1/4 thrust until we clear the asteroid field. Aye, Captain. The Thunderchild dropped out of its acceleration run at the edge of the Jupiter defense zone, where once a proud fleet of Earth, the lead crawl vessels fired. Brilliant beams of destructive energy streaked across space toward the Thunderchild. The bridge crew tensed, bracing for impact. The beams struck the shimmering field and disappeared. The shield pulsed brighter for a moment, rippling with absorbed power. In engineering, Dr. Foster watched her monitors with scientific fascination. Power levels increasing by 12%. Core stability holding. The absorption field is working perfectly. On the bridge, Davis stared at his readings in disbelief. No damage. Shields at 100%. And strengthening. The crawl fired again, a more concentrated barrage. Again, the energy was absorbed, causing the shields to glow brighter. They're confused, Turner reported, monitoring the Kraul communications. Their targeting systems show direct hits, but they can't explain why we're not damaged. Reed allowed himself a small smile. Let's show them what else this impossible ship can do. Lieutenant Davis, target their lead vessel with the phase disruptors. Davis's hands moved over his console, activating weapon systems unlike any Earth had deployed before. Target locked. But sir, they have shields too. Wilson nodded. The phase disruptors operate in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Their shields exist in normal space. Our weapons fire through spaces between. Firing, Davis announced. From the Thunderchild's angular hull, pulses of energy that seemed to bend light around them launched toward the lead Kraul ship. When they reached the alien vessel, they simply passed through its shields as if they weren't there, striking the hull directly. The Kraul ship shuddered, internal explosions visible through its viewport. Its power systems flickered and died. Silence fell on the Thunderchild's bridge, broken only by the beeping of sensors. Direct hit, Davis said, his voice barely above a whisper. Their shields didn't stop it at all. The Kraul responded immediately, multiple ships firing simultaneously, while others began to maneuver to surround the Earth vessel. Evasive action, Reed ordered. Let's not get cocky. We still don't know this ship's limitations. The Thunderchild responded smoothly, its unconventional drive allowing maneuvers that would tear apart a normal ship. More Kraul weapons fire was absorbed by the shields, and with each burst, the power readings increased. We're up to 70% power now, Grant reported from engineering, her voice tense. Dr. Foster says we're approaching untested levels. Reed glanced at Wilson. Recommendations, Admiral. Use the power while we have it. Hit them hard, then withdraw. Make them afraid. Reed nodded. Target 3 more vessels and fire at will, Lieutenant. Navigator, prepare an escape vector. The Thunderchild's weapons lashed out again, bypassing Kraul defenses and causing devastating damage. 2 smaller vessels exploded outright, while a larger one listed in space, venting atmosphere. The Kraul formation broke, their perfect coordination suddenly disrupted. Some vessels accelerated toward the Thunderchild, while others pulled back to regroup. They're adapting, Wilson warned. That's what makes them so dangerous. Reed watched the tactical display. All weapons, continuous fire. Navigator, take us through their formation at maximum speed, then execute the withdrawal plan. The Thunderchild surged forward, weapons blazing. It cut through the Kraul formation like a knife, leaving damaged and destroyed ships in its wake. The absorption shields continued to drink in enemy fire, though Foster's warnings from engineering grew more urgent as power levels approached 80%. As they reached the other side of the Kraul formation, Reed gave the order. Execute withdrawal plan now. The Thunderchild's engines flared brilliantly, and the ship accelerated away at speeds no Earth vessel had achieved before. The remaining Kraul ships attempted pursuit but quickly fell behind. On the bridge, the tension eased slightly as the distance between them and the Kraul increased. We did it, Davis said, disbelief in his voice. We actually hit them and got away. Wilson's expression remained grave. We surprised them. That advantage won't last. They'll analyze what happened and adapt their tactics. Reed nodded. But we gained something even more valuable than a tactical victory. What's that, Captain? Asked Navigator Jones. Reed looked at the data showing the Kraul fleet reorganizing, their pursuit abandoned for now. Time, he answered. We've given Earth time. And just as importantly, he gestured to the screen where the Kraul were clearly regrouping rather than continuing their advance. For the first time since this war began, we've made the Kraul afraid. The temporary command center on Mars Colony buzzed with a new energy. Officers moved with purpose rather than panic. On the main tactical display, the Kraul fleet had slowed its advance toward Earth, regrouping after their unexpected encounter with the Thunderchild. General Adams studied the latest intelligence reports with a frown. They're calling in reinforcements. Our scouts report at least 30 more warships joining their main fleet. Admiral Wilson nodded grimly. They won't underestimate us again. And they're bringing their flagship. The room fell silent. Everyone had heard of the Kraul flagship, World Eater, a massive vessel twice the size of anything humanity had ever built. It had never been defeated in battle. Can your ship handle that? Adams asked, skepticism clear in his voice despite the Thunderchild's initial success. Wilson met his gaze. We're about to find out. In the Thunderchild's engine room, Dr. Foster and Chief Engineer Grant worked frantically to stabilize the experimental core. The battle against the Kraul advance force had pushed the power systems beyond their tested limits. The dimensional bleed is increasing, Foster said, pointing to fluctuating readings on her monitor. The more energy we absorb, the more unstable the containment field becomes. Grant wiped sweat from her forehead. Can we reinforce it? Not without materials we don't have. Foster's face was grim. The core can handle one more major battle, maybe. After that. She left the sentence unfinished. They both knew what failure of the dimensional core would mean. An explosion that would tear a hole through space itself. On the bridge, Captain Reed studied the tactical projections. The Kraul reinforcements had arrived, forming a new battle group centered around their flagship. The World Eater lived up to its name, a massive dark vessel that seemed to devour the light around it. They're moving again, Navigator Jones reported. Current course will bring them to Earth orbit in 18 hours. Reed nodded. And us. Repairs are at 90% completion. We can intercept them near the Mars defense perimeter in 4 hours. Reed turned to Wilson. What's our strategy, Admiral? We hurt them before, but their flagship changes everything. Wilson's face was carved with fatigue and worry. We need to speak with Dr. Foster first. When Foster arrived on the bridge, her expression told them everything before she spoke. The core is stable for now, but the absorption shield has changed its properties. Every time it absorbs energy, the dimensional bleed increases. If we take too many hits in the next battle. How many is too many? Reed asked. Foster shook her head. Impossible to calculate precisely. But if the core reaches 95% capacity, containment will fail. Wilson leaned forward. And if we deliberately pushed it beyond containment? As a weapon, the bridge went silent. Foster's eyes widened slightly. The resulting dimensional rupture would destroy everything within several thousand kilometers, possibly much more, including the World Eater. Foster nodded slowly. Yes, but also the Thunderchild and everyone aboard. Reed exchanged a glance with Wilson. They were discussing a suicide mission. There's one more system we haven't tested yet, Wilson said after a moment. The tactical jump drive. Lieutenant Davis looked up from his weapons station. Jump drive. I thought we had conventional engines. The Thunderchild has both, Wilson explained. The jump drive is designed to move the ship instantaneously from one point in space to another without crossing the distance between. That's impossible. Yes, we know. Wilson's smile was thin. Dr. Foster's dimensional technology again. The drive creates a momentary tunnel between 2 points in spacetime. It's extremely experimental, Foster warned. We only managed 2 successful tests at very short ranges. The power requirements are enormous, and each jump increases core instability. Reed considered this new information. If it works, we could appear anywhere in the battle instantly, hit them before they can react, then jump away. Exactly, Wilson said. But we'd need to coordinate perfectly, each department working in absolute harmony. Reed looked around at his crew. These volunteers who had risked everything on an impossible ship. What do you think? Can we do this? One by one, they nodded. Then let's make a plan. 4 hours later, the Thunderchild waited in the shadow of Mars' moon Phobos. Before them, the massive Kraul fleet approached in perfect formation, the World Eater at its center. They're scanning for us, Turner reported from communications. But our signature dampeners are working. They don't see us yet. Reed took a deep breath. All stations report. One by one, each section confirmed readiness. In engineering, Foster and Grant stood by the core controls, ready to channel power where needed. Remember, Reed said to his crew, quick strikes only. Hit and jump before they can concentrate fire on us. No heroics. Wilson stood beside Reed's chair. The moment they detect us, they'll try to lock us down with their suppression fields. Don't give them the chance. Reed nodded. Weapons hot. Jump drive ready. Let's begin. He leaned forward. Execute jump 1. The bridge lights dimmed momentarily as massive power flowed to the jump drive. Space seemed to bend around the ship, and suddenly they were somewhere else, directly behind a crawl cruiser. Fire, Reed ordered. The Thunderchild's weapons lashed out, tearing through the unprepared cruiser before it could raise shields. As alarms began to sound throughout the crawl fleet, Reed gave his next order. Jump 2. Again, the ship vanished, reappearing above the crawl formation. More weapons fire, more destruction. The crawl responded quickly, energy weapons stabbing upward, but the Thunderchild was already gone. Power at 78% and climbing. Foster reported after the third jump. Core temperature increasing. The Thunderchild appeared and disappeared across the battlefield like a ghost, striking and vanishing before the crawl could respond effectively. 6 enemy ships destroyed, then 8, then 12. But the World Eater remained untouched, protected by layers of smaller vessels. They're adapting, Davis warned after their 6th jump, starting to predict our appearance points. As if to emphasize his words, the Thunderchild materialized after jump 7 directly in the path of concentrated fire from 3 crawl cruisers. The absorption shields flared brilliantly as they drank in the energy. Power spike. Foster's voice was tight with alarm. 85% and rising quickly. Jump now. Reed ordered. The ship vanished again, but not before taking more hits. When they reappeared, damage reports flooded in from multiple sections. Hull breach on deck 4, Turner reported. Emergency containment holding. Reed wiped blood from a cut on his forehead, where he'd struck the console during the attack. Status of the World Eater. It's changing course, Jones reported with sudden alarm. Breaking formation and accelerating toward Earth. They're making a run directly for Earth while their other ships engage us. Wilson grabbed the tactical console. They figured out our weakness. They know we can't be everywhere at once. Reed studied the tactical display. The World Eater was indeed pulling away, surrounded by a protective screen of escorts. Meanwhile, the remaining crawl vessels were spreading out, making it impossible for the Thunderchild to engage them all. Core at 88%, Foster reported. 2, maybe 3 more jumps before containment becomes critical. Reed looked at Wilson, the question unspoken between them. Wilson nodded slowly. We have no choice. Set course to intercept the World Eater. Sir, Davis said hesitantly, even with our weapons, the World Eater's defenses are too strong for a conventional attack. I know, Wilson replied quietly. That's why we're not making a conventional attack. Understanding dawned on the bridge crew's faces. This would be their final jump. Reed straightened in his chair. Prepare evacuation protocols for non-essential personnel. Engineer Grant, begin core destabilization procedures. As the orders were carried out, Reed looked at the image of the World Eater on the main screen. The massive vessel that had destroyed countless worlds was now heading toward Earth, carrying enough firepower to end human civilization. One ship against their flagship, Reed said softly, just like when we started. Wilson placed a hand on his shoulder. They said this battleship was impossible, Captain. Let's show them just how impossible we can be. Alarms blared throughout the Thunderchild as crew members rushed to evacuation stations. The ship limped through space, its hull scored with damage from multiple crawl attacks. In engineering, Dr. Foster watched grimly as the core's containment field fluctuated. The readout showed 91% power, dangerously close to the critical threshold. Final stabilization complete, she reported to the bridge. The core will hold for approximately 12 minutes once I remove the safety protocols. Understood. Captain Reed's voice replied over the comm. Begin evacuation of your section. Foster exchanged a glance with Chief Engineer Grant. You should go, she said quietly. Grant shook her head. Someone needs to monitor the core until the last moment. 2 sets of hands are better than 1. On the bridge, Reed watched the evacuation progress on his display. 3 escape shuttles had already launched, carrying most of the crew to relative safety. The remaining officers at their stations were those who had volunteered to stay until the final jump. The World Eater has entered Earth's defensive perimeter, Navigator Jones reported. Earth's remaining ships are engaging. But he left the sentence unfinished. Everyone knew Earth's conventional fleet stood no chance against the Crawl flagship. Admiral Wilson stood beside Reed's chair, his face set with determination. Distance to target. 20,000 kilometers in closing, Jones replied. We can make the jump anytime. Reed nodded. Lieutenant Davis, status of weapons. Phase disruptors are offline. Davis reported from tactical. Conventional weapons at 30%. Not that they'll matter much against the World Eater's shields. They don't need to, Wilson said. The core will do the real damage. Reed opened the shipwide channel. All remaining crew, this is Captain Reed. Final jump will commence in 2 minutes. Proceed to emergency stations immediately. He paused. It has been my honor to serve with each of you. He closed the channel and looked at Wilson. Admiral, you should take the last shuttle. Wilson shook his head. This ship was my dream, Tom. I'll see it through to the end. Reed didn't argue. Instead, he turned to the bridge crew. Davis, Turner, Jones, the shuttle bay. That's an order. The 3 officers hesitated, then saluted. As they filed off the bridge, Turner stopped at the door. Earth will know what you did here today, sir. Both of you. When they were gone, Reed and Wilson were alone on the bridge. Through the view screen, they could see the distant shape of Earth, blue and green and beautiful against the blackness of space. Closer, the massive form of the World Eater moved inexorably toward it, its escorts fending off the last desperate attacks from Earth's defenders. Core at 93%. Foster's voice reported from engineering. Safety protocols disengage. Ready for final jump on your command. Reed settled into the captain's chair one last time. Plot jump coordinates directly inside the World Eater's shield perimeter, as close to their core as possible. Coordinates set, Foster confirmed. Captain, it's been an honor working on this project. The honor was ours, Doctor, Wilson replied. Your impossible science is about to save Earth. Reed's hand hovered over the jump control. Initiate final jump in 3, 2, 1. He pressed the control, and the Thunderchild vanished from normal space. For a brief, disorienting moment, the ship existed in a dimensional corridor between points in spacetime. Then, with a violent shudder, it rematerialized, directly alongside the World Eater, inside the massive ship's defensive shields. Alarms screamed as proximity warnings activated. Through the view screen, they could see the dark hull of the Crawl flagship filling their view, so close they could make out individual weapon emplacements and hull plates. Core at 96%. Foster's voice was tight with tension. Containment failing. Reed activated the engines, pushing the Thunderchild directly against the World Eater's hull. Foster, Grant, get to the emergency pods now. Too late for that, Captain, Grant replied calmly. We'll make sure the core does its job. On the Crawl flagship, confusion reigned. Their sensors had not detected the Earth vessel until it was already inside their shields. Weapons that had been firing outward at Earth's defenders couldn't be brought to bear on the threat, now attached to their hull like a parasite. Reed looked at Wilson. I guess we really built an impossible ship after all. Wilson smiled sadly. Not impossible. just ahead of its time. The core readout flashed red as it passed 98%. The ship shuddered as dimensional energy began to leak from containment. "For Earth," Reed said quietly. "For all of us," Wilson agreed. The core breach began as a small ripple in reality, a point where the barrier between dimensions grew thin and then tore. The Thunderchild's hull glowed with strange energies that defied the normal laws of physics. These energies spread quickly to the World Eater's hull, creating patterns of light that raced across the massive ship's surface. In the World Eater's command center, the Krall Supreme Commander watched in disbelief as reality itself seemed to bend around the human vessel. His technicians reported phenomena they couldn't explain: space folding in on itself, energy readings beyond their instruments' capacity to measure. For one brief moment, both ships existed partially in normal space and partially in the dimensional void that Dr. Foster's technology had tapped into. Then, with a silent flash that somehow echoed across space, both vessels vanished. Where the World Eater and the Thunderchild had been, a strange dimensional rift pulsed briefly before collapsing in on itself. A shockwave of exotic particles spread outward, washing harmlessly over Earth's remaining ships. 3 months later, in a solemn ceremony at Earth Defense Headquarters, the surviving crew of the Thunderchild stood at attention as General Adams unveiled a memorial plaque. In honor of Admiral James Wilson, Captain Thomas Reed, Dr. Anna Foster, Chief Engineer Olivia Grant, and all those who gave their lives aboard the Thunderchild, he read. They proved the impossible was possible, and in doing so, they saved humanity. The gathered crowd included government officials, military personnel, and civilians, all united in gratitude for the sacrifice made by the Thunderchild's crew. After the ceremony, in a secure laboratory deep beneath the headquarters, scientists worked quietly around a strange device. It was a replica of Dr. Foster's dimensional core, built from the data transmitted by the Thunderchild before its final mission. "The dimensional principles are sound," one scientist explained to General Adams. "Foster's work has opened up possibilities we never imagined before. Faster than light travel, unlimited energy, perhaps even communications across vast distances." Adams nodded. "And our defenses. Every ship in the fleet is being retrofitted with absorption shield technology. The Krall will never catch us unprepared again." Across the Earth and its colonies, humanity began to rebuild. The story of the impossible battleship spread, inspiring a new generation of scientists and explorers to push beyond the boundaries of what was thought possible. In distant reaches of space, the remnants of the Krall fleet retreated to their home systems. Their reports spoke of human technology that defied understanding, of one ship that had destroyed their greatest weapon. For the first time in their history of conquest, the Krall feared another species. Nothing was the same. And somewhere, in a dimension adjacent to normal space, something impossible happened. A small pocket of stability formed within the chaos of the dimensional void. Within this pocket, damaged but intact, the forward section of the Thunderchild drifted. On what remained of the bridge, emergency lights cast a dim glow over 2 figures. Admiral Wilson stirred, pulling himself painfully from the wreckage of his chair. Nearby, Captain Reed lay unconscious but breathing. Wilson looked out through the cracked view screen. Instead of stars, strange energies swirled in patterns no human had ever seen before. "Well," he said softly to himself, "I guess we'll need to build another impossible ship. This time, to get us home." He reached for the emergency beacon and activated it, sending its signal not through normal space, but through the dimensional corridors that Dr. Foster had discovered. A signal that perhaps someday someone would detect and understand. The impossible journey was just beginning.